The structure we call Stonehenge today is a massive prehistoric stone monument comprised of about 100 upright stones that have a circular layout. Historians and archaeologists have spent centuries trying to figure out its purpose, but can only agree on one thing: Stonehenge was a sacred place. After hundreds of different research papers, it was discovered that the structure evolved over a period that lasted close to 10,000 years. However, the Stonehenge we know today was built sometime between 5,000 and 4,000 years ago. But before we dive into the juicy secrets and what came before Stonehenge, make sure you drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more awesome content. How big is Stonehenge? It might sound crazy at first, but the massive Stonehenge monument was part of a much larger sacred landscape, which included a stone monument that was roughly 15 times in size. The largest Stonehenge stones are called sarsens. They are up to 30 feet tall and have an average weight of 25 tons. Researchers believe that the stones were brought from Marrowbow Downs, 20 miles north of Stonehenge. The smaller stones are called bluestone because of the bluish color they get when wet or when they are freshly broken. They were brought from several different locations in West Wales, with the farthest ones being as far as 140 miles. However, it's not quite clear how they were moved across such distances because they weighed up to 4 tons. Some experiments have shown that stones up to 1 ton can be moved via a wooden trackway, but a dozen people are needed to do that. Also, researchers are not sure that such a technique was used during the construction. There is also a theory that suggests the bluestones were carried by glaciers closer to the Stonehenge area sometime during the last ice age. The construction of Stonehenge. As we mentioned earlier, Stonehenge was a part of a much larger sacred landscape that has many wooden and stone structures, including burials. Archaeologists also discovered what they believe was evidence of widespread prehistoric hunting and a potential avenue-like road that might have led to the monument. It is also believed that Stonehenge was not the first monument erected on the Salisbury Plain. Recent research has shown that 3 large pine posts that acted as some sort of totem poles were erected at the site as early as 10,500 years ago, making Salisbury Plain a sacred area way before Stonehenge was built. Additionally, scientists believe that hunting played a very important role in the Stonehenge area, and researchers have found 12,500 flint tools or fragments and about 350 animal bones not a mile away from the monument. The date of the finding ranges from 7,500 to 4,700 BC. A minimum of 17 shrines, some of which are shaped like a circle, have also been discovered near Stonehenge, as were dozens of burial mounds indicating that hundreds and possibly thousands of people were buried there. In addition to that, researchers have discovered a House of the Dead, which is a Neolithic burial chamber dating from 3700 to 3500 BC. The Cursus Monuments. It was recently discovered that 2 earthworks known as the Cursus Monuments were erected at Stonehenge at about 5,500 years ago. The longest cursus ran for 1.8 miles. 200 years later, 2 gigantic eyeglass-shaped wooden palisades were built at Avebury, which is close to Stonehenge, and then set on fire during ceremonies. About 5,000 years ago, more construction was done at Stonehenge, indicating that something similar to upright timber posts or bluestones were used. 4,600 years ago, a double circle was created using a few dozens of bluestones. More changes to the monument. Approximately 4,400 years ago, more changes were made on the site. Sarsen stones were brought to Stonehenge and erected in the shape of a horseshoe. Each of the pairs of stones had a stone lintel connecting them. A ring of sarsen stones was built to surround the horseshoe, with tops of stones connecting. The entire structure gave the appearance of a huge interconnected stone circle that surrounded the horseshoe. 4,300 years ago, Stonehenge was expanded further to include 2 bluestone rings, one between the horseshoe and the outer layer of the interconnected sarsen stones, and one inside the horseshoe. 300 years later, the construction at Stonehenge slowed, which led to neglect, with some of the stones stolen and taken away from the site. The connection between the Cursus monuments and Stonehenge. Archaeologists found an interesting connection between Stonehenge as we know it today and the earlier Cursus monuments. The longest Cursus monuments, which ran for 1.8 miles, had 2 pits, one on the west and one on the east, both of which align with Stonehenge's processional avenue and heel stone. In a 2015 article that was published in the Antiquity Journal, a team of archaeologists found evidence that the people who may have lived on the site had a rich diet of meat and dairy products, suggesting that Stonehenge was not built by slaves or forced labor. Why was Stonehenge constructed? There are many theories as to why Stonehenge was built. Vincent Gaffney, an archaeologist at the University of Birmingham who is leading the mapping of Stonehenge and its environment, says that the monument is a part of a much larger and more complex landscape. A 2012 theory released by members of the Stonehenge Riverside Project suggests that Stonehenge is the place where Britain was unified, a time when people from the entire island worked together. Additional proof supporting their theory is a similar style for building houses and pottery, which would also explain how the bluestones were carried from Wales. According to Professor Mike Parker Pearson at the University of Sheffield, Stonehenge was a huge undertaking that required massive labor to move, shape, and erect. The work it took to pull off something that great was probably an act of unification. Stonehenge is definitely one of the most famous and mysterious megalithic monuments in existence. Its prehistoric concentric circles are a constant topic of discussion because it's still debated how and why they were built in the first place.